interview wrestlers, they talk about the rules, and they talk about the storylines. On OTR, we go for the truth, we get to the heart of the matter, and we leave the rules behind. Today, we go one-on-one with Chyna, the 9th wonder of the world. We ask her about posing nude for Playboy. We ask her about Trish Stratus, and we ask Chyna about her role in the World Wrestling Federation. Today, on OTR, it's Chyna one-on-one.
Off the Record with Michael Landsberg is brought to you by the Keg Steakhouse and Bar. For great steaks, good friends, see you tonight.
The WWF has become a wonder on Wall Street because of its unique and direct way of marketing. Big men, beautiful women, and storylines. In short, sex and violence. The toughest role, though, to define for me in the WWF is Chyna's. Welcome to the show, Chyna.
Thank you.
Glad to have you with us, and let's dive right in. What are you in that company right now? Are you The Rock, Triple H, Jericho, Benoit? Do we just add your name to the list? Do you consider yourself a real wrestler right now?
I think I'm trying to figure that out myself. I do realize that a very small handful of men in the World Wrestling Federation, I've managed to, infiltrate my way to the very top of the business. I think I do it in a much different way. Sometimes I wrestle, which is an extreme unique ability, obviously, to be able to wrestle with the men. I have a very unique look and character. I'm able to cross over, have a little bit more flexibility to cross over into other areas.
So there really is no category really for Chyna right now.
I think she's just Chyna, 9th wonder of the world.
What does the rest of the roster, and what way do they look at you? And specifically, let's talk about the men and how they perceive you, because if you're having trouble defining your role, this has been a sport or entertainment that has always defined its rules very clearly. How do they look at you? Is there tension?
From what I can see, there's the opposite of tension, which I think is really bizarre, too, because when you look at the overall story of how, I got to be where I am in this business, you would say I'm in this completely male-dominated world. Nobody wanted me there in the beginning, and that was obvious, believe me.
How was that obvious?
The guys were very cruel to me. There were jokes played on me that were not very nice. I was literally told to my face, some not so nice things and some not so nice language. And nobody would work with me. Nobody would sell for me. And it was just a new thing. It was an intimidating thing. And it was very, very difficult. However, now I've almost sort of been able to have the men help me get to where I am, because I understand that this is not, I feel that I'm a very special person. I have unique abilities, but the fact of the matter is I couldn't have done it without the guys, and I do appreciate them. And they just treat me different, and they so highly respect me. I'm just not one of the other women to them.
See, traditionally in the WWF, women have not lasted a long time. They've either left through disgrace or through tragedy sometimes. I think of the list of women, Wendy Richter and Medusa and Sunny and Sable. How are you going to last in a company that has clearly pushed its women aside over the course of 2 or 3 years?
Well, I think, number one, I'm afraid of that happening, and I think that that keeps you on your toes. And I also, as I said before, I think I'm appreciative of everything I do, because I think that the mistake that other women have made is that they start to believe that they're bigger than the business, and it's a collaboration of everybody together, and how hard a person is willing to work, promotionally, how hard people are willing to work for you, and it's all those things combined, and it wasn't easy for me to become a part of the World Wrestling Federation in the first place, but I wouldn't take no for an answer. And I made people respect me, and I made people learn to like me, and I walked the walk and talked the talk. So I plan on doing that. I'm a very driven person, and I plan on more doors opening for me instead of shutting. I'm not going to ruin that for myself.
The obvious comparison would be to Sable, not in terms of your wrestling ability, which you clearly said on another show on this network that you could kick her ass. And there was an interesting confrontation that was really bringing to light. And I'm wondering, as you look back at Sable, and you now have had time to reflect, obviously, since she has been employed by Playboy as well, and since she has moved on. What's your take on her? What do you have to say to her?
Well, I really think that, you know, I don't know what happened personally between Sable and the company.
But what's your take on her?
Personally, I never had a lot of interaction with Rena, and I think at that time the business was a lot different, where we would go on talk shows and we were a little bit more in character. You know, a lot of things have developed over the last few years that everything's changed, and I think people are a little bit more themselves. And so at that time, I know on the talk show I was highly disappointed because I felt like I was trying to play a little bit and be in character, and she took a lot of things very seriously. So I think we had some conflicting personalities, but I certainly don't have anything against her personally. And knowing that we work for a very big company and there's a lot involved, she may have very well had problems. I don't know that. So I try not to judge.
Well, it's interesting because what people talk about when they talk about you more often than not is the fact that you do have this class and this dignity, and that you have a totally other dimension to you, that you play a character. What's difficult in your company, to me as I look at it from the outside, is the fact that men traditionally have been able to walk the walk and talk the talk, as you talk about, be political, and they get promoted. Vince likes the competition between men. He thinks that makes them hungrier. But when women do the same thing, I'm not sure that they get the same kind of promotion. Is that just sort of typical chauvinism?
Double standard, absolutely. And I'm not accepting that. And I still have a ways to go. I've covered a lot of ground. But, you know, I think that, like, slowly, it's sort of in a martyrish way, it's starting to, you know, I don't see 10 other women coming in my place and doing the same thing, but I'm glad that at least I'm reaching people in a different manner that are able to see that that's, I mean, let's face it, it is a male-dominated business, and it always is going to be, because the men are the better wrestlers. There's more male superstars. They're more exciting to watch. They have bigger, larger bodies that are better to look at, in my opinion.
Not in my opinion.
No?
No. Are you giving me a choice between your body or the male body? You or Triple H? No offense to your good friend. I'm taking Chyna.
But in the World Wrestling Federation, would you like to watch 10 matches of the women in their bra and panties? I mean...
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
I think it's good that we have variety, but I think your top stars are usually always going to be somebody that's in it for the love of the game.
Let me ask you before we go to break, because I want to ask you about the bra and panties thing in a second. But first of all, Stephanie McMahon right now is the #1 woman in the company.
Right.
Give me your reaction to that, given the fact that in a lot of ways, she hasn't paid her dues at all. Some would say maybe you haven't paid your dues. She hasn't paid any dues at all.
Well, I think she's paid her dues in a different way, and she's not a wrestler. And she is part of the McMahon family.
Don't lose the candor, because the first part of the show was amazing, speaking from the heart. Any heat between you and Stephanie?
I think that Stephanie's paid her dues since the time that she was a little girl. She knows far more about this business than I do, but I look at it from a different standpoint, because I have to get in the ring and do something so totally different than she does.
All right, on that note, we'll go to break. We are joined today by Chyna, and when we return, we'll talk about the bra and panties and wrestling in the mud, and I'll ask you whether you're a feminist, and if you are, how you endorse that when OTR returns. Stay with us. You have been very vocal about your body, your sexuality, and just in general about what being a woman means to you. Are you a feminist, and does that word mean anything to you?
I never really considered myself to be a feminist. I think sometimes most feminists go overboard, and their cause isn't, you know, they don't get accomplished with the things that they fight for. I love chivalry. I love romantic dates. I would like to be able to cook my man bacon and eggs in the morning because, you know, I like those little things back and forth. They're loving gestures, and they may be old time. However, I work in a much different world, and I have a different type of body than the norm, and I stand up for what I believe in. And that, to me, is being a woman.
Part of your signature is, don't treat me like a woman. What does that mean?
That means, don't treat me like I'm not as smart as you. Don't treat me like I have a definite place in society that I have to do. Don't pay me less for a job that I'm doing as good as you. Give me the same opportunity.
You know what that is. That's right from the feminism handbook.
Yeah, but they go and fight, you know, whether they should wear their bikini tops on the beach or not. And I don't think that that helps, but I think most of the time they're just a little bit overboard, too. I think it's all or nothing with most of them.
But the bikini top thing is mostly to say to men, don't look at us as sex objects. And I think what you have done is carved out a place for a woman in the WWF that says, hey, I'm more than just a sex object. I mean, you're on the cover of Playboy.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But there's nothing wrong with being looked at as a sex object. There may be something wrong with being looked at as just a sex object.
I think that the problem is that women are so focused on being sex objects that they can't be looked at as for doing anything else.
But that's why you get taken for granted,
And I think that that's up to a lot of the women as well, because what they do is they then mold themselves to say, you know, I'm not going to the gym to work out to get a body like that. I don't like it. Why? Because I don't want to have to put my full face of makeup on to go into the gym and have the guys looking at me thinking I look ugly without my makeup. Well, I go into the gym and I sweat and I don't wear any makeup and I have my hair all over here and I check out the guys. So I just think there's a couple of viewpoints that need to be switched around.
So what would you say to Trish Stratus, who's now carving out her niche in the WWF, and I think could go in one of two directions: the traditional role of the woman, which is to put on a bikini and wrestle in the mud on a pay-per-view, or the Chyna role? What advice would you offer her as she's now molding her career?
Well, I think Trish Stratus is a prime example to me of somebody that was hired with no ability. And I think that she was hired strictly because of her looks. And although she has surprised me because she's been very willing to do a lot and she's learning very quickly. However, in my opinion, Trish didn't have to pay her dues. So, you know, I still think about that, and I still think that she should have to, as well as other women. But I think that, you know, my advice to her would be to keep doing what she's doing and to, you know, recognize that, realize that, so because you're going to last a lot longer if you do.
Right. If Trish got hired for her looks, which is undeniable, why'd you get hired?
One, I wouldn't take no for an answer.
Yeah, but you know what? There's a lot of women who wouldn't take no for an answer who end up hearing no. You know, Vince McMahon is not the kind of guy that you can force into a corner. So it's got to be more than that.
That's true, but it would have gone far beyond that, I think. You know, I've been shoving my physique and, you know, my persona down people's throats a long time before the World Wrestling Federation, too, and people said no. So if it was not wrestling, it would have been something else. However, I'm very lucky that that happened because this has been the best platform I could think of.
Right, so why'd you get hired, though? Why do you think? What made you unique? If Trish right now could say, I got hired because of my looks, why did Chyna get hired? And not no for an answer. I'm not taking no for an answer on this. Was it your look?
It could be. It could have been, yeah. But aside from my look, I think a look that looked as very freakish, oddity, rather than what the typical sex sells look. Also, I trained very hard to get there, and I trained with clothesline guys till my arms were black and blue and got thrown around the ring and broke some bones in training. And you know, I faxed my picture every day and put little resumes together and went to every show I could and talked to a lot of people and, you know, met Hunter and Sean, who are very much...
And I want to ask you about your relationship with Hunter and the effect that that had on your career and the fact that you had a very positive input on his career, because when you became his bodyguard, he went to the top, and he's right now at the top with a different woman on his arm. We'll talk about that when Off the Record returns in this exclusive one-on-one interview with the 9th wonder of the world, Chyna. That's next. We built our reputation in the wrestling community and made our friends and enemies by getting into the inside story. Give us your take on this. Linda McMahon, WWF CEO, admitted last week that she and the Fed are interested in purchasing WCW. How are your people, your friends, reacting to that? And are you guys worried if it's all one company, there's no competition?
Absolutely. You know, I'm talent in a business where, you know, the more the merrier. I mean, that's just smart on talent behalf to always have another option. I'm very happy where I am. I do very well where I am, but it's that you never know what's going to happen. So, yeah, of course.
And your friends in the industry have moved back and forth, often a very smooth transfer from WWF to WCW. And it
But
seems
it does make you a higher
Hunter
commodity.
did it, right?
Absolutely.
Have you considered it?
No, not at this point. Probably not ever. The
Shawn
way things are
Michaels
looking now.
is a good friend of Hunter's, right? They're pretty
Yes.
tight? And yours as well, right? We saw him on the ramp at Raw, but he didn't make his way off. You looked at him, though. You knew he'd been back in the gym. Is he going to come back to the WWF? And this is not a storyline question. This is a real question, given the fact that he had 3 crushed vertebrae in his back. Will he come back?
I don't know.
Do you hope he does?
Yes.
Even though he might be risking his health. No question he was a great performer.
I think he's a great performer, and I
He
think
is.
we all risk our health.
Your business is not unlike the National Basketball Association, because what we heard last week from Alonzo Mourning was that he has this terrible kidney ailment. And Shaquille O'Neal came out and said, I'm scared because I got to take anti-inflammatories every day of my life so I can play 82 games and drag this big frame up and down the court. He says, I blame the NBA for having to do that. Can you, in your sport, say, you know, I don't want to take the anti-inflammatories and the painkillers, and I'll just sit out and still be respected? I'm talking legal drugs here, not illegal drugs. Stuff that I get when I go to the doctor if I get aches and pains. But in your case, you've got to wrestle all of these evenings. Can you say, no, I don't want to do it?
I can honestly say that for myself, no. But
No what? I'm sorry, I just have to clarify.
know that I don't say, you know, I have to wrestle, or, you know, I don't want to, or I'm very vocal. I don't feel that I have as much competition amongst the guys to outdo them, because I just do different stuff from them. And if you know, some things do scare me, so I'll say I'm simply not doing that, and I'm more vocal about that. But I do tend to get wound up sometimes about guys that I very much care about, sometimes that I'm closer, and I see them doing things that I wish they wouldn't do.
You must go to Hunter. You must say, you know, take the night off. You're hurt. Didn't he hurt his elbow? Do I remember him, you know, quite seriously? But he kept going and kept slugging it out.
Yes.
And do you see, was it his ankle that he had hurt? He had been injured.
His knee.
His knee.
His knee.
Well, I had all kinds of limbs and joints I was throwing out.
You know, yeah, I mean.
But does he feel a compelling need to go out night after night because he's the top guy? And if he says to the company, look, you know, I'm not wrestling, all of a sudden that card isn't nearly as interesting.
But they wouldn't say that, because they outdo each other, and they you know, again, want to stay in that spot. So yeah, I mean, there's an enormous amount of pressure. But on the other hand, you know, Vince McMahon himself could tell them, don't go out there, and they would do it anyways.
Really? So the drive doesn't just come for the fear that I'm working for a company, which is what Shaq was saying, but the drive comes from within, which is, if I take a few nights off, I may come back as number 2.
Well, that's not the kind of vacation you want to take. I mean, that's one of the questions. When do you have time for vacation? Well, what do you do on your free time? Well, I don't have any. And especially now, I'm doing all this other stuff, you know. Every day for me is filled. I haven't gone home in a month. But you know, that's by choice, too, because I know that I have to promote what I'm doing, and I have to be out there, and I want to be in the game. And people are fickle, out of sight, out of mind, out of storyline. And that's not a position that you want to be in.
All right, I want to talk about Triple H, and I want to talk about some other people that you've come in contact with. I'll throw out some names, and we'll do it to one of the biggest names in all of wrestling right now. You see her on the cover of Playboy, and you're seeing her on OTR. Chyna. More from her when we return. This is some of the email that we received. Michael, I did not think it was going to happen. I have to admit that I didn't have a lot of faith in you and your show. That's not very nice, but you did it. You actually pulled it off, Chyna, on OTR. I have died and gone to heaven. That's from Todd in Toronto, and that could be from me as well. It's been a total pleasure. We'll talk more when we return. Here's how you can reach us, and here's how you can request the guest that you want to see. Welcome back to the show in Chyna on Off the Record. I really appreciate your candor there, and the fact that it's one thing to ask the tough questions, but it's another thing to answer them, and I do appreciate that very much. You are on the cover of Playboy this past month. What kind of experience was that, and was it a tough decision at all?
It wasn't a tough decision. I went and approached Hugh Hefner about it myself. I feel that it makes a very important statement. It's something that I wanted to do to show a different side of myself. It's something that I wanted to do.
You certainly did.
Yes, I did.
Many sides, all sides.
A very feminine side of myself, to clarify. And I think that we portray one type of most of the time one type of woman. I think that that filters all the way down to how women feel that they look about themselves and what they're supposed to look like. And I think that again, I go back to that martyrish sense. I feel like when you go to the front of the line and you do things that are different, you almost take the bullet, you know, for a couple of people, and it makes it easier for people to accept a different look.
Right, and for you, I think what makes it unique is that you may be the first woman to ever appear on the cover of Playboy who actually tries to eat all the time, right?
And I eat a lot.
Yeah, which is very unusual. I don't think a lot of Playboy models do that.
No, a lot of them don't eat at all.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that I know you feel passionate about. And fitness is something you feel passionate about, and you have produced a video as well, right?
Yes, I mean, fitness was much more, you know, before I was ever Chyna, I was Joni working out, and during my adolescent years, I took a lot of solace in working out, and I think it sort of started to form my own identity that way, and through my physique, and kept me away from, you know, a lot of the bad stuff, and gave me something to do. I was very much a loner. I came from an extremely dysfunctional family, and, you know, I turned that around and focused on myself and worked out. So, and I think that's probably one of the biggest questions that I get asked all the time. How did you get that body? And this is how I get, this is one of my workouts, and I am extremely thrilled. I've always wanted to do a fitness video, always. I always thought maybe before, you know, I was a WWF wrestler that maybe I would be, you know, doing one of the fitness shows.
Just a few seconds left on the show. Do you have a problem with the fact that Triple H is now at the top and you helped give him that push and you're not standing beside him?
Not at all. I think it's been better for both of us. I think it has allowed me an opportunity to get out from his shadow, and I've been able to do so much more. I knew he would get there, and I'm very happy that we...
I have to say I'm going to end the interview now, but the fact is I shouldn't be thanking Chyna. I should be thanking Joni Lauer, because you gave me a glimpse inside her head. Thanks for doing that.
Are we done already?
We are.
Oh.
Michael Landsberg's clothing, courtesy for you.
Oh no, not every day. It's like sometimes I guess I go, that was really fast, and I'll go, it was? Felt like 90 minutes to me. I don't know about you.